Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the UFC 261 co-main event for the strawweight title between defending champion Zhang Weili and challenger, former champion Rose Namajunas. Okay, let me quick start with UFC stats just to get into this. So Zhang Weili, considerably more experienced, 21 fights, 21 wins, 1 loss, and that 1 loss being the very first fight on her pro career as well. So she's actually, she lost a pro MMA match in 2013 and then a pro kickboxing match by unanimous decision. And then she went on a 21 fight win streak, culminating in obviously the strawweight title against Andrade. And then one of the best fights that we've ever seen in mixed martial arts in Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Okay. Where are we? So Rose, on the flip side, has considerably less fights. She's been performing on the higher level a lot longer, though. Zhang Weili, although she's been in the UFC for a few fights now, Rose is far more familiar with the fans and came through the Ultimate Fighter series, so exhibition fights in her experience as well. 10-4 overall. Pretty much the same average fight time. Just under 12 minutes for Zhang Weili, 12.5 minutes for Rose. Rose has a slight height and slight reach advantage, but I think that will seem more evident in the fight as the fight's playing out. Now, it says Zhang Weili is a switch stance fighter. She's predominantly orthodox. The reason she switches stance most of the time is because her left leg is her most powerful leg. So when she's standing orthodox, obviously that's her lead foot. But that does work quite well for her. She does a lot of switch lead kicks, which is going to be a interesting challenge for Rose to deal with. Rose listed as orthodox. Now, it gets interesting when it gets into the grappling exchanges. So I'll cover that in a moment because, Zhang Weili's takedown offense is 100%. She's very physically strong. I think Rose will seem slightly quicker. And I think, like I said, that Rose will seem like she's got a slight reach advantage. The difference between the two in the striking range, Zhang Weili tends to walk her opponents down because she's very quick reactively. She's very, very strong in her counters. She uses a skip inside low kick a lot of the time to kind of coax her opponent out and engage them in the fight. And from the skip inside low kick, then she'll drop down into hands and then into clinch if the range is closed down quite quickly. But she's quite happy to push forward and quite happy to stand her ground as well when her opponents step into range. So this is where Rose can kind of lead the dance a little bit, because what we saw in her fight against Andrade, what we saw in her fights against Joanna, is that she's got excellent management of range laterally. She moves laterally very nicely, light on her toes, bounces in and out very well, kind of what I was talking about with Masvidal as well. Alters the range between her and her opponent really well, which forces them to step into range when they feel like she's moving away, and then she can bound back in and catch them with shots. She's got a very long left hook. And I think that's going to be a good counter for a lot of the switch lead kicks that Zhang Weili uses. She uses a switch inside kick, inside low kick a lot of the time. She's also got switch body and switch high kicks that she'll use, but she does tend to leave her head on the center line. And what we saw when she fought Joanna, and what we saw earlier on, I think it was Danielle Taylor in her debut, because she leaves herself on the center line, sometimes her opponents can commit to punches and come over the top and knock her off balance. And this is where Rose's grappling comes into play, because she's got great rear naked chokes. What is it, 5 rear naked chokes on her record? She's got the most finishes in strawweight history as well. She's got lots of different ways to finish this fight, and very underestimated striking still after knocking out Joanna. 5 rear naked chokes on her record. Oftentimes, these rear naked chokes come from scrambles, though, as opposed to her taking a fighter down and dominating them. Knocking them down with a head kick, for example, or scrambling to their back when they're still standing and finishing the rear naked choke there. These are better options for her than trying to grapple with Zhang Weili. I don't think it's impossible for Rose to take Zhang Weili down, but I think it would be an unnecessary waste of energy. I think she can find ways to Zhang Weili's back without really having to try and wrestle too much. Climbing up, taking her back, sinking her hooks in, or perhaps hurting her, knocking her down, and then jumping on her back. There's one other scenario as well, which I keep seeing in my head when I play this fight through. Now, Zhang Weili throws a lot of spinning back kicks, and very rarely do they land. She stands in a stance, she tries to get her opponent to circle onto them before she spins and tries to catch them in motion. But it's kind of hit and miss, literally. Sometimes she does miss. The danger with spinning back kicks is that a confident opponent that reads your timing will be able to step in close to your hips as you've got your back turned. It's a good way of nullifying the kick, which they'll teach in Taekwondo classes. But in a grappling sense, in a mixed martial arts context, stepping into that range to then clinch, get your arms around somebody, get a body lock, climb up them, maybe even trip them to the floor so you can jump on their back as they're scrambling to their feet. These are circumstances where Rose might be able to engage the grappling without dealing with the 100% takedown offense of Zhang Weili. I definitely think Zhang Weili, she's a very physical fighter. She's very strong. You can see that in her build. Very well balanced physically as well, upper body as well as lower body. Rose is far more light in her movement, far more elastic, but that allows her to, like I said, spring into range, land her shots, and then bounce out again. The other thing we have to consider as well for Rose is that Zhang Weili's power leg is the lead leg. It's her left foot, which means that the majority of the kicking attacks for Rose will be coming off that lead foot, which it's faster, but it's not necessarily the most powerful. But one thing that Rose does do really well is a chop low kick. I mean, we saw a high kick against Michelle Waterson, but that chop low kick is a perfect counter once Zhang Weili's thrown her low kick. She can counter it as Zhang's trying to recover her balance. Sometimes it might force her to take an inside low kick to chop her rear leg into Zhang's lead leg, but it would be a good counter to those kicks, and because it's Zhang's strongest leg, that would be a good way of nullifying it. Now, I think a lot of people going into this fight are expecting Zhang Weili to be quite comfortably controlling and pressuring all the way through it. But it's Rose's management of range and lateral movement that will make the difference in this one. And if she can apply that, then it doesn't mean that she's not going to grapple at some point in the fight as well. Because, as I said, closing distance, trying to wrestle with Zhang Weili is going to be challenging for her. There's no need for her to, kind of expend that energy. This is a 5-round fight. She needs to pace herself. If she gets locked up with Zhang Weili and has to engage her strength to counter, then she's going to exhaust herself much faster. And when she does find herself into the clinch, she's got 2 things to watch out for coming from Zhang. One is elbows on the break, which she's very effective with and has not landed anything quite as clean as I think she's going to at some point in the future. And the other thing is the reap on the outside leg. Oftentimes that body lock is so strong that she's able to just control the upper body of her opponents and outside reap, trip them from the outside leg, and then she's immediately into half guard. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see Zhang Weili approach this fight from a grappling context, especially if she's struggling to close the range against Rose. From Zhang Weili's perspective, I think she can walk herself into range, feel like she can cover the majority of the shots coming from Rose while she's being pressured, and then, maybe strike to clinch, inside low kick to lead hook to clinch, knee, outside reap, or then elbow on the break. Majority of her takedowns will be upper body, so I think that might be another opportunity for Rose to scramble and get to the back. But strength for strength wise, when it comes to grappling, like I said, I don't think that's a great idea. The one thing Rose does have to watch out for, given the fact that she's got such a long stance, it does help with her head movement, and it does help with her in and out lateral movement, the range play that I was talking about. But it does leave that lead leg very vulnerable for the fast inside low kick from Zhang Weili. And, 30%, 33% of her strikes go to their opponent's legs. And if you're someone like Rose, who not only requires that leg strength to move and to, get in and out of range, but also requires it to control her opponents on the ground, especially if she's taken their back, investing in the legs early for Zhang Weili is going to be a smart thing to do. The danger, obviously, as I said, is leaving her head on the center line and Rose coming in with that big left hook and catching her and knocking her off balance. Rose has got fast hands. And what we saw from the Joanna fight is that she's quite happy to step into range and throw bombs. So she could quite easily be in and out of range and stinging Zhang Weili and not be there for the counters. But she's got to get her timing right in this one. Okay, have I missed anything? So Zhang Weili in top control, that's where her strength is evident as well. She's able to control her opponent and smash them with really short range damage and elbows. If Rose finds herself in that situation, she might be able to. She might be able to get underhooks and scramble to the back, but that's really where we're going to see the strength of Zhang Weili. I think Rose is a great athlete, but I think strength-wise, we're going to see a difference if they do clinch up. And if Rose finds herself in bad positions and gets trapped, getting out of those bad positions might be really difficult for her. That's why maintaining the scramble, keeping movement when she's grappling is going to be key. Because at any point, if the fight settles and Zhang's in top position, there's going to be problems there. And as we remember from the Jessica Aguilar fight, she jumped on a triangle from top and rolled to her back and then attacked the armbar from there. So we've seen very little of Zhang Weili's ground game, but I expect it to be pretty fearsome. I think we're going to see a little bit more of that in this fight, and it will be interesting to see how her strength, power, top control, and then the attacks that we've not quite yet seen in her game, how they play off against Rose, who's obviously very good on the ground and has a variety of things she can attack with. I think that's everything. Oh, I've got a couple of questions. Lateral movement. Yeah, the feints are going to be big for Rose as well, and putting her high kicks on the end of her combinations. Okay, let me quick get into these questions. I got a couple. Eric, Rose always seems at her best when she's elusive and leveraging her length. What are her best options for keeping Weili at range? Exactly what I've just touched on, really. The footwork, moving laterally, bouncing in and out, posturing as if she's going to do something. Rose has got a variety of good kicks, but I think it's the management of range that is going to be key in this one, because if she doesn't stay on her toes and keep moving, she'll find herself getting walked down. And then, it's only a couple of shots before Zhang Weili works her way inside and is right in Rose's face. I do think she's got a reach advantage even over what it says. I mean, what is it? 2 inches and 2 inches in reach, 1 in height. It doesn't sound like a lot, but she makes the most of that reach. And because she moves in and out of range, it looks like she covers so much more distance. But footwork is key. So partly staying moving and partly not getting nailed with 33% of the shots that Zhang Weili throws her to the legs. So remember that. Okay. How much difference of power do you see in the 115 title? It appears to be a lot. It does appear to be a lot, but I think it's less power and more strength. I mean, we saw Zhang Weili and Joanna go toe-to-toe for 5 rounds, and Joanna took some real big shots and, looked like a Klingon at the end of the fight. Rose, on the other end, dominated her in the rematch and stung her clean with the left hook and put her down in the first one. I don't think that's because Rose is more powerful than Zhang Weili, but perhaps more accurate and perhaps a little quicker. I think Zhang Weili's strong, and I think that transfers to power. I think Rose is fast, and that transfers to power. You can come at power from opposite ends of the spectrum, and I think that's what these fighters do. There's a loaded what's the best way of putting it? Explosivity to Zhang Weili, and you would imagine that her physique would transfer very well to like some kind of powerlifting. Fast, single explosive movements. I think Rose is quick off the mark and very accurate. Bit more of a sting in her punches, but that's more because of the speed than anything. I think it's just the 2 questions for this one. All right, I'll wrap it there. It's going to be an interesting one. I'll be pulling for Rose to have a good performance, because I think all the pressure's on her. Big crowd there and everything. I don't know whether that's going to play into her advantage or not, but I think there's a lot of expectations coming in on the part of Zhang Weili. I think people are really high on her, and I think rightly so. She's very dangerous, and I think if she wins here, we might see her maybe move up a weight class. I think her future is going to be a weight class above, because I think she's got the physicality for it, and that might be evident in this fight against Rose if they lock up. Should be a good scramble. Looking forward to it. Catch you next time.